A final point of grammar that's important for you to pay attention to and learn is verb tenses. Funny cartoon here, breakfast at the grammar cafe. Would you like those eggs over easy or over easily, right? Is it an adverb? Ha ha ha. But here's the idea. Chronology in a sentence is important, and it needs to be clearly expressed by the use of proper verb tenses. Are we talking in the present tense? Are we talking in the future tense? Are we talking in the past tense? And frankly, the choice of that is pretty easy and pretty straightforward and doesn't require a lot of time and attention. And in fact, of the points of grammar tested on the GMAT, verb tenses would be pretty low on that list. You may see one, maybe two, but probably more like one example of a sentence where verb tense is really going to come into play, and yet we still want to make sure you know what we're talking about. The most commonly tested, quote, difficult verb tense on the GMAT is the past perfect tense. So obviously it's not going to test something as simple as, should it be in the past tense when instead it should be in the present tense? That I think will be obvious to you. What you might not pick up on is whether or not a tense should actually be the past perfect tense. When two events happened in the past, both events happened in the past, we actually need to use the past perfect tense to show which one actually happened earliest, which one happened furthest in the past. And here's the rule. It's very easy to form the past perfect tense. We just don't do it a whole lot when we speak. Obviously when we read we do, but we probably don't pay attention or pick up on it just because it makes sense to us. To form the past perfect tense, you add the word had before the past tense form of the verb. That's how you actually create it. And what am I talking about here? Well, here's a timeline. Past, present, future. We tend to talk in the present, future, or immediate past. However, sometimes we say things that really include two events that happened in the past. And one of them, they both happened in the past, but one of them actually happened before the other one in the past. So they're both in the past, but the one that's furthest in the past must actually use the past perfect tense. And you may need to pick up on that on the GMAT. So let's take a look at an example. Here's the sentence. I never saw such a beautiful sunset before I went to Kauai. We could only be so lucky, right? Maybe hopefully you've been to Kauai. If not, it is a beautiful place. I've actually been there. And I never saw such a beautiful sunset before I went to Kauai. Is there anything wrong with that? Well, it certainly, again, doesn't offend the ear. I understand exactly what's being said, and yet there are two events happening in the past, right? The going to Kauai and the seeing of the beautiful sunset. And which one happened first? Well, the word before is a big tip-off, isn't it? Before I went to Kauai. That means something happened before I went to Kauai, but I went to the Kauai in the past. So if we're looking at this timeline, going to Kauai is in the past, for sure, but something happened even before that, right? The word before is important. That's tipping us off to something, right? What happened before going to Kauai? The never seeing of such a beautiful sunset. I never saw such a beautiful sunset. When? Well, before going to Kauai, but that was even in the past. Does that make sense? And so we're missing something. In English, that thing that happened furthest in the past, the never seeing such a beautiful sunset, needs to be expressed actually in the past perfect tense. So actually the sentence, the original sentence, is wrong. What we need to say instead is I had never seen, past perfect tense, I had never seen such a beautiful sunset before I went to Kauai. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. Well, a little bit it is. I mean, I'm going to understand what you're saying if you say that first sentence to me. Unfortunately, on the GMAT, you're going to need to be able to pick up on this. Again, you may not ever see anything like this on the GMAT. If you do, it'll be one type of thing. But if you see a verb tense type of a thing, it's going to be past perfect tense. And this is what's going on. This is what I'm talking about. One more example for you so you can practice it. Here's an example sentence. When I opened the hood and saw smoke pouring from the engine, I realized that I forgot to add oil. Is it correct? Is it incorrect? Go ahead and press pause. This is your application example. Give it a try. See if you can pick up on what we're talking about. So, how'd you do? Hopefully you realize the original sentence is wrong, even though it sounds perfectly fine, obviously. But nevertheless, on the GMAT, it would be wrong. Why? Well, because two things happened in the past, right? The opening of the hood and the seeing of smoke, and forgetting to add the oil, right? The seeing smoke pouring from the engine is one of the things that happened in the past, and the forgetting to add oil is the other thing that happened in the past. Which one happened first? Well, obviously, I wouldn't have smoke pouring out of my engine if I had added oil. In other words, that was what should have happened first. So we would need to change that in the sentence to the past perfect tense. The correct version should read, when I opened the hood and saw smoke pouring from the engine, I realized that I had forgotten to add oil. That actually came first. And that, my friends, wraps up sentence corrections part 2. We've covered a lot of ground going all the way back to sentence corrections part 1. There's a lot of information here, but it's good information, it's useful information, and it's all specifically applicable to how you can get more right answers on sentence corrections on the GMAT. Master the bracketing technique, learn it. We've applied it on all sorts of these points of English grammar. It's useful across the board. And then obviously master subject-verb agreement, pronouns, modifiers, misplaced modifiers, parallel construction, idioms, and now verb tenses. With that, get out, practice them, visit my blog for additional information, and go out and dominate the GMAT.